Okay, so have you ever imagined, like, a medieval bestseller, but about a saint?
Interesting.
Not, dry sermons or anything, but stories, legends, even some that are kind of funny when you think about it.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's what we're diving into today, the little flowers of St. Francis.
Oh, the little flowers. It's a fascinating
It
collection.
really is. So we're going deep, figuring out why these stories still resonate, even centuries later.
Well, what always strikes me is how it's not a typical biography, It's more like whispers, legends passed down, and then finally written down.
Right, like a game of telephone, but with St. Francis as the subject. Makes you wonder how much those stories changed over time.
It does, and those changes, those little details that stuck, they tell us a lot about the people who kept those stories alive.
That's what makes this deep dive so cool. It's a window into that whole early Franciscan world, their humor, their beliefs.
Absolutely. And speaking of humor, some of these stories are wild.
Yeah, like Brother Leo and his river of temptation. His metaphorical baggage. Let's just say it's very specific. What do you think that says about how Franciscans viewed, like, sin and striving for a spiritual life?
It's a great question. Because that metaphorical load is something we can all relate to, right? We each carry burdens.
Definitely.
And Brother Leo's story suggests that acknowledging those burdens, even the ones that seem, I don't know, maybe a little silly or really specific to us, is a step towards actually dealing with them.
It's that classic Franciscan way of finding the profound in the ordinary. And then there's the story of the three robbers who have this total change of heart after they meet Brother Angel. Like, could someone really go from, well, thug to monk just like that?
Well, it might seem like a stretch, but this story really gets at that Franciscan belief in the transformative power of, faith, that anyone, no matter their past, can find redemption, find their purpose.
Powerful stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, but then we have Brother Rufino, right, who decides that the best way to give a sermon is completely naked.
Yeah, that one always gets a reaction.
And St. Francis eventually joins him.
Well, it might sound shocking now, but it was really about their emphasis on radical poverty, you see. Humility,
Yeah.
rejecting all those material possessions, embracing a simpler life.
So it was about, like, literally stripping down to really live out those teachings.
In a way, yes. Trying to, shake things up, make people really look at their priorities.
I mean, it makes you wonder, what would be a radical act of faith like that today? What would it take to make people rethink things?
Now, that's a question. Although, The Little Flowers isn't just about shocking stories, is it? There are these really profound moments like St. Francis and the Wolf of Gubbio.
Right, it's one of the most famous stories from the book. You have St. Francis taming this wolf that's been terrorizing a whole town, and they end up, in harmony.
Yeah.
And it feels so relevant, even now.
hmm
Why do you think that story still resonates with people?
I think it's that message of empathy and reconciliation, and not just between people, but between us and, well, nature. It speaks to that desire we all have for harmony, especially in our world now with all the environmental challenges and everything.
You're right. It's like the wolf, this symbol of fear and chaos, becomes a testament to compassion. Like, it can overcome anything, even our wildest instincts.
And the fact that the wolf ends up living peacefully in the town, it's like this beautiful image of coexistence, of what's possible.
Definitely.
I don't know.
And it makes you think, what are the wolves that we're facing
Hmm.
individually and as a society? How can we be more like St. Francis, I guess,
Yeah.
and find that path to peace? It really does make you think about how we approach those tough conversations,
Yeah.
those moments where we need to understand across some really big differences.
Absolutely. And speaking of understanding across differences, The Little Flowers also tells the story of St. Francis's journey to meet the Sultan.
Oh, right. It's like, talk about a bold move, venturing into a whole different culture, a different faith.
It really was.
What was he even hoping to achieve? Was it just about, like, converting the Sultan to Christianity?
I mean, that was part of it for sure. But what's really striking is how St. Francis approaches the Sultan. There's this respect, like a real desire for dialogue instead of just, forcing conversion.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
He even offers to, get this, walk through fire to prove the strength of his faith.
Wow, no way. Did he actually have to do it?
Luckily, no. But the offer itself, I mean, it says a lot. The Sultan, he doesn't convert,
Huh.
but he's clearly moved by St. Francis's sincerity. He even lets the Franciscans preach freely.
So it's this amazing example of, like, interfaith dialogue, especially during a time that wasn't exactly known for that, right?
Exactly. And it's a powerful reminder for us, even now. building bridges, finding understanding,
Hmm.
especially when we're dealing with different beliefs.
It's a lesson we need now more than ever, probably.
Definitely. The little flowers reminds us of that. Okay. But shifting gears a bit here, we can't really talk about St. Francis without mentioning the stigmata.
Right, the stigmata.
Yeah.
It's this powerful event, mysterious too. Those wounds of Christ appearing on St. Francis's own body. It's captivated people for centuries.
Huh.
Artists, theologians, everyone. What did it mean back then in the 13th century?
Well, you have to remember, in that time, it was seen as a sign of like extraordinary piety, this physical manifestation of spiritual connection to Christ, a testament to, truly understanding his suffering. But it was also controversial. Even back then, there were people, even in the church, who were skeptical.
And the Little Flowers talks about that, right? Like, even some of the people closest to St. Francis, they doubted at first.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are all these stories about how doubters became believers after actually seeing the wounds. It's like the book is trying to address those doubts directly.
It is. It's almost like saying, look, even they were convinced. It reinforces the story, highlights just how important the stigmata was. Not just for Francis himself, but for the whole Franciscan order.
So how did it change things for St. Francis actually experiencing something like that?
It seems like he was really humbled by it, even overwhelmed. He saw it as a sign of God's mercy, but also this huge responsibility. It definitely made his devotion to Christ even stronger, made him want to follow in Christ's footsteps even more closely.
That makes sense. But it went way beyond his lifetime, didn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
The Little Flowers has all these stories about the power of his relics,
Mm.
even just his clothing, being able to heal people.
Exactly, like the story of Brother John of Alvernia, for example.
What was that one again?
So Brother John, he has this vision of St. Francis rescuing another friar from purgatory, and he does it by invoking his wounds, the stigmata.
Wow.
It's powerful imagery. It shows how St. Francis's story continued to inspire people even after he was gone.
But it also shows how important relics were back then, right? These
Well,
physical objects that connected people to the divine.
absolutely. Relics were incredibly powerful in the medieval world. They were seen as these like conduits of grace, and anything connected to St. Francis, especially the stigmata, those were seen as especially potent.
It makes you wonder, what is it about these stories, the relics, these figures from the past? Why do they still fascinate us, even now,
Yeah.
when the world is so different?
Maybe it's that human need, for connection, for something bigger than ourselves, for meaning.
You might be onto something there. It's like the Little Flowers still offers us that, even after all this time. It really makes you think about how we're living our lives, doesn't it?
It does. It's like the Little Flowers is this invitation, to see the world, even just for a little bit, through St. Francis's eyes.
And what a world he saw. Miracles, talking animals, these radical acts of love. Just makes you wonder, what would he say about everything now? About our world?
That's a good question. I think he would definitely challenge us to simplify our lives, to really focus on what matters. Compassion, connection, and caring for the planet, right?
Like, those Franciscan values are still so relevant.
They are. There's something about his message that feels timeless. That call to connect with, something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's not just about history. The Little Flowers, it's like a guidebook or something for a better way to live. With compassion, simplicity, and really appreciating everything around us.
That's the power of these stories, I think. They endure. So as we finish up our deep dive into the Little Flowers of St. Francis, it leaves me thinking, what would you ask him? If you could actually sit down with St. Francis, have a conversation, what wisdom would you be looking for? And how might his message inspire you? To live differently, maybe. To find more compassion in the world, more purpose. Those are questions worth thinking about. And maybe, just maybe, the Little Flowers can help us find those answers.
Beautifully said. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring those stories, the ones that connect us to, well, what it means to be human.